Hey, everyone. It is Sunday night. And oh boy, get to go back to work tomorrow. Yay, fun me, right? So let's have some fun tonight. Let's talk about this cool project, Beowulf, that just launched last week on Thursday and have a good time. So without further ado, we are going to bring out Grant Lankard.
Hey Russ, how's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
Doing great.
So you launched on Thursday, funded on what Friday night, and
Yeah,
then you got a project we love. That is definitely an awesome bragging rights right
it
there,
was a
man.
big it was a big surprise, and it made me very happy. And I have no idea how you get that. From what I understand, that's what everybody asks. Like, how did you get that? I don't know. It was nothing illicit. I can promise that.
Uh-huh, yeah, right. You were sending bribes over, don't lie.
Right.
Nah, they just send them advance copies of it and they loved it so much, right? We'll say that. That sounds like a good excuse.
I mean, they looked at my Kickstarter. I mean, it's not like I sent them they don't even really know what the storyline is other than what's on my Kickstarter. So yeah, but yeah, that was really awesome, and it's nice. It feels like a validation a little bit because I mean, obviously, the last 3 or 4 months I've gotten a lot of rejection letters. A lot of people on Facebook or Instagram, talking down about the comic books. So to have somebody say, "Yeah, we like your comic book," that's cool.
That's awesome, man.
I mean, we've
So,
gotten a lot of good reviews too. So
well, I mean, not everything's everybody's forte.
right,
But we'll talk about the Kickstarter later. Well, what I really want to get into is, we've talked about the Kickstarter off and on for the last, month, I guess, since we started talking about doing the cross promotion. But what I was wanting to know is, what's your story? What got you started into comic books and doing the inking and the coloring and all that fun stuff. So let's go back. What initially got you into comic books?
so I'm a '90s kid. I don't know. I think you and I are probably about the same age, but like I grew up in the '90s, which is when like if you were a comic book creator, you were like a comic book creators were treated like rock stars back in the '90s. Um, that was about when Image Comics. Oh, that's my wife. Uh, Image Comics were made what 1993, 94. So in 1993, I would have been 13, and like that's when like a couple of the highest selling comic books of all time came out. And I remember just sitting like on the playground. We would trade comic books back and forth. It Comic books back then weren't the niche that they are now.
Oh
It
no,
was like
you were definitely in one of those nerd groups. Like you've got the preps, you've got the jocks, you've got the nerds. You were the nerd group. You were the 4 or 5 kids that traded it, and everybody laughed at you because they love comic books.
right. And yeah, it's weird. I mean, like comic books back then were huge, which is funny. Like way more people read comic books, but it's like a lot more people watch the TV shows and the movies nowadays.
Yep.
So it's kind of weird that it's kind of like flip flopped in that way.
Well, I think the movies have helped a lot. Back. So I what is the word that I also I can't figure out the word I'm trying to come up with. I also had that issue. I grew up, I love comic books, and like I would try to talk to it with all these people, and they're all like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
So, you were like, I had nobody to talk to about this stuff. And like, but yet everybody read comic books because you'd always, you know, see all the stuff everywhere about it. And you'd go in to get your favorite issue and they'd be sold out.
Right.
And it was like, where are all these people that are buying these comic books in this town? Because obviously I'm not friends with any of them.
Right.
It's like you said now, everybody watches movies, they watch the TV shows, but it's a good thing. I think they kind of solved the issue of getting people back into comics again because, mid 2000s comic books kind of died off. People weren't buying new comics.
Right.
They were trading the older comics and stuff like that. But then, once the X-Men movies started coming out in the 2000s, and then later on the Marvel movies started rolling out and stuff. It really opened people's eyes, and they're like, oh, this stuff
Right.
is really cool. And so now you've got all these people that are going out and buying back issues of comic books and getting in. Hey Mike, thanks for joining in, buddy. How's it going tonight? So
Hey,
it
Mike.
really drew people back into the comic book industry, which is I think what their intentions were. They're like, well, if we can't sell a comic book, we're going to buy these or sell the rights to these so they can be made into movies and
Right.
shed some light back onto them. So it is kind of cool, now when you go to cons, there's 20,000 people there instead of 20 people there, like it was
Right.
back in the day.
The other thing that's weird is that, like, now when you go to comic, like, that's never happened. Or is it good? Okay, it looks like it's working again.
Yeah, you lagged for just a second there. You got a lag spike, so okay. Nope, I think we lost you again. If you have to quit out and come back, go ahead and do it
Can you
again.
hear me?
I can hear you, but you're not moving again. Hey, Ed. Yeah, if you want to try quitting out and coming back, so like we were talking about before, we were talking about the whole thing. For those of you joining Ed, he had gotten into the comic books in the mid '90s, and we really had issues trying to find comic books back then. You go into a store. Uh, Anybody that's joining now, Grange just lost connection for a second, so he'd be right back. Here we are. So to catch everybody up, are you
I
good?
refreshed the page. Hopefully that works.
Yep, you're good now. So anybody that's coming back in now, we were talking about, comic books in the 90s. It was hard to find books. And then, now people really don't buy the books. So they cycled over to the movies, and now, movies are the kind of the niche, and it's bringing people back into the comics, trying to, find the old comics, bringing the prices back up again.
Yeah, I think the price of comic books is a big hurdle to overcome. Um, so somebody was saying something about digital comic books. I think that might be. I don't know. It's funny. Like, I have a few digital comic books, but for some reason they don't seem as special to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just because I'm old. I don't know.
You know what? I share in the same sentiment. That was the word I was looking for earlier. I share in the same sentiment with that. We had a conversation. Mike knows what I'm talking about. Trish brought up the thing when Jason Lennox was on with Lords of the Cosmos a few weeks ago, and we had talked about digital trading cards. They were talking about the NBA stars were doing digital trading cards, and somebody had told them digital art was the way to go now. That there was a big market for people trading digital art, and I'm like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
When I commission art from an artist, and getting the original that was the pencils or the inks that were scanned in before color was added is a lot more sentimental than getting a digital piece of art to me anyway. And on top of that, you can't guarantee digital art. It was one of the things that we had talked about. I think digital art like it is, it's making the comic books kind of crawl to a halt with everything, because once you buy it, it's worthless. you
Right.
know you have 100 million people around the globe that have this digital comic book, and it was like I was trying to explain to Jason, I don't know how you would say you have an original piece of art when you
Right.
buy a digital piece of art, because that person could have sold, you could have been like the 150th person that person gave that file to, saying, I'm selling you the original art. So it's kind of like a scary zone to try to tiptoe into and
So
say,
you're basically just on the honor system
that's
there.
right. And then if somebody hacks your art files, then it's everywhere. So your art's worthless anyway. So I don't know. I just
Right.
don't trust the whole digital thing.
I mean, we're offering PDF for our comic book, but the main reason why I'm doing that is just because, I mean, I have people overseas that I knew wanted the comic book, and I'm not gonna mail them. Like, I'm not gonna mail a comic book to Italy. Like the girl who did uh, the variant cover. She's from Italy, and she wanted a copy of the comic book, and I said, It's like $30 to mail a comic book to Italy. I'm sorry, but I'm not doing that. I'll send you a digital copy, but I'm not sending you a print copy. And she was fine with that, but I don't know. Are you nervous at all about doing PDF versions of your book?
Not really. So here's the thing. There's a lot of people that are like us that are old, and they like the tangible idea of holding stuff in their hand. I mean, it's just like this. If I sent you this piece of art in a JPEG, I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
you could print a card of it that would look, half as good as this. But having this in your hand, you're like, oh man, I got this awesome art card with Steph Wilson and Ruben Rosas on it. It's the same way with the book. And the thing is, if people rip off your book and they distribute it on the internet, out of those 50 or 60 people that may come across that pirated copy of the
right.
book, maybe like, hey, this book is badass. I want to figure out where I can get a physical copy because I like physical copies. So, in a nutshell, people are kind of on the fence about doing digital copies. And I'm on the same thing as you. There's people that are overseas that want to buy the book. And it's hard to calculate what custom fees are and stuff like that. So, you think you're choosing a good uh, level to choose for shipping, and in the end you end up biting the bullet. You send 20 or 30 copies to different countries, and you may end up going negative on the Kickstarter, and that's what I've heard from a lot of different people.
Yeah,
So with you and I, this is our first Kickstarter campaign where we're actually going to be shipping physical copies, and it's like, let's take the stress of that out. Let's offer a digital copy. And maybe when it comes to issue 2 or book 2, we'll
yeah,
offer international shipping when we figure out that, hey, this pricing worked out. We didn't end up going negative. We had a little bit to play with. We'll pour that into book 2. And then when book
right.
2 releases, we can offer that international shipping and do a little more research in it once the COVID pandemic thing dies down, because that's been a lot of what the drive has been, up and down and up and down,
Right.
and the prices and the borders closing. And that's another issue. You had instances where people were like mad because their Kickstarter packages were sitting
Yeah,
at the border, and this person over here is like, I want my package. It's like, look, dude, I shipped it. Here's the tracking. It's sitting in your country. It just hasn't gone through customs yet because they're not allowing anything through because of the pandemic. And they're like, whatever, Kickstarter, I want my money back. And Kickstarter's like, cool, here you go. And and then so then you're out everything, and those people are still getting their books. So it's just like, now is a really iffy time if you're an established person that does Kickstarters, that makes 2 figures on your Kickstarters. Yeah, it
right.
sucks still, but it's not a big kick in the teeth like it would be for us, just getting started. So
Yeah, I think that was one of the big questions that I had for you before doing this Kickstarter. Like, do you think I should do international comic books, or and I don't know. Like, I've heard too many horror stories about perfectly good Kickstarters, but you make one mistake like in international shipping and the entire Kickstarter's just it's almost not even worth doing.
well, I mean, no matter what, whether you break even or you make a little bit, or you lose a little bit on Kickstarter, it's worth it because you're getting your name out there. Like you and
Exactly.
I, we're not in it for making money. We're in it for, we want people to read our book. That way we have people that can say, hey, this book is really good. And then, they will help, build the drive for, people going to our website afterwards, when we start printing extra copies and putting them on our website. We're developing a fan base of people,
Exactly.
and we're meeting people. That's the best part. We're meeting really, really cool people. Like you and I would have never met had you not
Exactly.
done this Kickstarter for Beowulf, and we would have never gotten together and did a cross promotion. And we wouldn't have the same mutual friends hanging out and do the same thing. And so,
Exactly.
in a way, it's a great thing. You got to know going into Kickstarters, you're not making anything on it. It's basically just about serving your books up, getting them to your fans, and helping build that fan base. So when cons open back up, and you've got people that are going to come in and be like, hey man, I bought your book while we were locked up, and I
Exactly.
absolutely love it. And and you're like, you did, why? And we can finally talk about our books and have them on the tables, and get to have that kind of experience. I think you should let LCS internationally make bulk buys so they can put your books on their shelves in their country and get your world out around the world. Yeah,
Yes.
i
Yes.
mean I mean, I get that, Danny, but then but then you've got to get those people that are willing to buy that book and put it in their shop. I mean, that's the only problem.
You have to be sure that there are at least 30 or 40 people who want to buy your comic book in Italy or England or wherever it is. I don't know. For now, I think the PDF is the easiest way to do international.
Well, and the thing is we're both offering the PDFs really cheap. So, I mean, even after the Kickstarters, and one of the things that we can do is, which will be way easier in my mind, is if you like the PDF and you're out of the country and you want a physical book, you can order one from the website. We'll figure out what the shipping is on it, and then you can just invoice them for what the shipping is, and they can pay for it outright. That way, we're not overcharging people and we're not undercharging people. I mean, that's my biggest worry is, I'm saying, oh, it's going to be $40 to ship it to you. And they get it and it was like $26. And they're going to be like, this asshole overcharged me $14 for shipping. Or you charge
Yeah.
25 for shipping and then ends up being like $53. And you're like, holy crap, I just took a $28 loss on a book that I made $1.50 off of, And so it's really a fine line. So, I totally get why you did that. That was something that we talked about before you launched, and before I launched is, are you going to offer international? And I don't mind shipping to Canada just because it's about $40 to ship any package to Canada. I ended up splitting the difference on mine. I think I made mine 25 instead of 40 just because, I want it to be able to get over there to people that want to read the book. But everywhere else, I'm like, yeah, we'll wait. And that's something that'll be helpful too. So like once the Kickstarter ends and we get physical books and we have people that want to buy the physical book that got the digital overseas and we invoice them, then we'll know right about, okay, this person in Italy wanted a book. I shipped it to them. It was $37. And you can write that down. And that way you have an estimate for each country. Not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, that's a win right there.
Right. Yeah, and I see Danny. Yeah, that's the comment that I was going to comment on. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that, Danny. I mean, I'm just saying, like, for me, considering that this is my first Kickstarter, the thing is, international shipping really complicates things. And I mean, I don't know. Maybe at some point down the line, I'll try to figure that out. But just for this particular Kickstarter, I wanted to do US only. I mean, people from around the world can still buy the PDF and enjoy that. But I don't know. I've just heard too many horror stories about like otherwise good Kickstarters going bad just because they made one or two little mistakes in international shipping.
Well, I mean, and it's happened on domestic only Kickstarters. I mean, the same thing. They
Yeah.
don't charge enough for shipping, and they end up in the hole. I mean, I personally know a couple of them that have done that. But enough on shipping and digital books.
Yeah.
So back to what we were talking about. We were talking about how people had gotten into the movies more than the books, and then we had talked about the cons. How back in the day there'd be 20 people at a con. Well, now there's 20,000 people at the con, and how
Right.
openly received it is compared to back in our day in the 90s when it was like ha nerd, because you were talking about Iron Man and Black Panther, and all these different characters, and people are just,
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm like I have a stepson who's 18, and I'm jealous of him because when he goes to his comic book conventions, he actually goes and like he goes there to like meet girls, and I'm like, if you had told me back in the '90s that people would be going to comic book conventions to meet girls, I would have never believed that because I don't. It was probably the same way around where you were growing up, but as soon as a girl found out you read comic books, she was like, "Okay, it's been nice talking to you. See you later." You know, so that's something that's super super changed.
well, yeah, and it was like right around the 2000s when it changed, because before you talk to them about video games or comic books, it was like, nah, see you later. And then like right around 2000 ish, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was that changed. I don't know if it was the X movies coming out and stuff like that, or just people were more open about saying, I don't care if you think I'm a nerd. I've partaken in this for the last 10 years. It's about time. I came out of the comic closet.
You
You know.
know, You know what the first comic book that had like a really serious female following was Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Because I remember back in the '90s, anytime I would meet a girl, I would who she would say like, "Oh, I read comic books too." It would always be Sandman, which is fine. That just wasn't my cup of tea. But then I would say like, "Oh, you should check out this superhero comic book," and then usually the conversation would be over. But yeah, I think it's probably a combination of things. I mean, I think maybe there are more comic books written by women nowadays than there were back in the '90s. I think maybe they've toned down the TNA a little bit, which probably what was scaring women away a little bit. And yeah, I think you're right. I think probably the movies and the TV shows and stuff have attracted women. I don't know. It's probably a combination of things.
I don't know, but I like it. I love it. I love how it's just awesome. It's awesome to see something that we grew up with, and the worlds and that we grew up with, that we lived through as kids, and like now it's openly and widely, out there. It's just really cool to go be able to like go to work and be like, oh, hey, have you seen this? The latest Avengers movie, and they're like, oh yeah, man, it was awesome, and I loved it. And it's like you can still talk to them about your favorite characters, but they may not read comic books, but you can still talk to them about the movie and
Right.
get your fix that way. So it is kind of cool,
Yeah.
how it's bridged the different people.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, like trying to market this comic book because a lot of people on Facebook say that they read comic books, but then you start talking to them and you realize, like, oh, maybe they read one comic book like 10 years ago. Um, so that's interesting too. So like, you have to wonder, like, why are people putting that on Facebook? I mean, are they doing that because they think that makes them look cool? I don't know.
I don't know either. So you got inspired by comic books in the mid '90s. What was your favorite comic book growing up?
Growing up, I liked. Let's see. Oh, I liked everything. The Dark Knight Returns was my all-time favorite comic book as a kid. It's still one of my favorite comic books. That was a comic book that kind of just blew my mind. I think everybody. I don't know. I think the first time you read that comic book, it blows everybody's mind a little bit, just because you never thought that a comic book could be that epic before that. I like all of the Frank Miller stuff. I really liked a couple of those Kurt Busiek comic books that came out around then, like Marvel's Kingdom Come. And then as I got a little bit older, I got into Alan Moore. Um, let's see, like Watchmen, The Killing Joke. Um, what else? Miracle Man. Just all the I think I think those comic books appeal to like a teenager because they're kind of like rebellious. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of taking like the superhero tropes and kind of making them more adult.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's
so
what.
let's see. I think it would have been about 1991 when I first got into comic books. That would have been when I was about 11, and I started buying them at the newsstand. There used to be these things called newsstands, which I know makes me sound old, but back in those days, you could buy comic books just about anywhere. You could buy them like in a pharmacy. You could buy them at the grocery
Grocery
store.
store. Yep, they were available pretty much anywhere. Your department stores, your grocery stores, your pharmacies. Everyone had them. If they didn't have a section for them, they had a little spinner rack with the main series that people really bought.
Yeah, I remember getting kicked out of the pharmacy a couple times because I was sitting like in the aisle reading comic book. The pharmacist came out and kicked me out.
Come on, Grant. You weren't going to pay for that comic. You were going to read and run.
I think like I would read one comic book and then I would buy a different one. So that should tell you how cheap I was as a kid.
Hey, I understand, man. Growing up, in the era that we grew up, our parents didn't have a lot of money. It
Right,
was like, here's $3 or $4 to go buy yourself something, and so you're like, all right, I really want to read this one, but I have to have this one. So it's
right,
like, all right, I'll read this one, and then I'll buy the one I have to have.
exactly. And it's crazy to think that they were $1 now. I don't know how much did comic books cost when you first started reading comics?
See, I don't remember. Every time I would buy them was when my parents would be with me, and I would just be like, I want this one, and I would either get it or I wouldn't. I don't remember, honestly.
I remember when comic books went from being $1 to being $1.25. And then they just out of nowhere jumped up to $1.95, which was crazy.
Yeah. Danny says there was an LCS at the end of the app. Shop owner was a young guy would send me to Eckert's to get retail variants. Then my mom threw my collection in the rain in 1990, and I didn't collect for 30 years. Oh, that sucks.
She threw it in the rain. Wow. That's an act of vengeance.
Well, and that's the thing, that was the other thing. A lot of us that grew up in the 80s and the 90s, when we'd be at school, our moms would go in our room and clean our rooms. So we'd come home and like half of our toys would be gone. Like, oh, you didn't play with that anyway. I was like, yeah, that's why I was sitting out because I did play with that. And now it's gone for like good.
Right.
And so, you hear that unfortunately about a lot of people in their comic book collections. They would go to school and they'd come home and their mom would be like, oh, you don't need all these old books. You've got new ones to read. And it's like, you don't understand.
Yeah, you
These are
don't understand.
collectible, These are like a trading card. This is not something you throw away. It's something you put up and, you can reread again later once the whole series comes out. When 3 years down the road, when you're like, oh, I forgot all about that series. I need to go back and read it because they're retouching on it in this series. And yeah, now all those books are gone for good. So that sucks. That's terrible.
Yeah, I have a box in my parents' attic, and I need to go through it because I mean you never know what hidden gems are in there. I think I don't know what condition it is in, but I do know I have the first appearance of Deadpool in my parents' attic. So I mean, who knows what it looks like now? Because I mean, it's not like my parents' attic is like temperature controlled or anything like that, you know.
Or if the rats haven't turned it into a nest.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
Oh God. But I mean, who knows? I mean, I have hundreds of comic books back at my parents' house.
Oh, that's a shame, man.
It's funny. You said that you haven't really had much luck. I think I've heard you say you haven't had much luck trying to get your kids into comic books yet.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, no, my kids love comic books.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay. So my stepson, he reads a few comic books. We haven't been able to get my stepdaughter into reading comic books yet. She's more of a fan of TV, movies, stuff like that. But I bought her a bunch of comic books about teenage girls. I don't know, she just doesn't have any interest in them.
I'm in Southern Florida. The silverfish, aka bookworms, destroy paper, anything.
Oh, really?
That's what Danny said. And Angie said, and lots of comics at home.
Right. Yeah, I have all my well, I mostly collect trade paperbacks now as opposed to comic books.
Well, the trade paperbacks are so much easier, so you don't have to get your good books out and and fumble through the pages. And I mean, yeah, it's fun to read the originals, but not when they're worth a lot of money. And you're like, hey, I'm gonna pass this down to my kids, who will hopefully keep them.
Yeah. I have a
You
couple.
give them your collection, and the next week they roll up in a Ferrari. Like, where did
Right.
you buy that? Oh, Dad, those books you gave me? You'd never believe that one book was worth like $150,000. So I bought a new house and I got a Ferrari.
You know what? I have a couple of the comic books that my dad had as a kid. Um, I don't know. I don't know if I could part with. Well, part of the problem is that like back in those days, nobody kept their comic books like in good shape.
No, they just threw them on the coffee table, and there's ring stains on them. There's tape on them where they accidentally opened it too hard and ripped half of the front cover off. and there's like phone numbers wrote on them, because you know how that
Right.
was back in the day when you had the rotary phones, and it was whatever was close enough for you to write on. And so you
Right.
have the ones that got names and doctor's appointments and phone numbers and little notes scribbled on them, or they were
Yeah.
rolled up and used to swat the dog with, or
Because of course back then nobody knew that these things were going to be worth anything, so they just like threw them around the playground and stuff. Yeah. So that's the other thing. Like whenever you look up like in a pricing guide and it says, "Oh, this comic book's worth $200 or $300," you have to remember that's near mint that they're quoting. So if your comic book isn't near mint, it's not going to be worth $200 or $300. You know.
yeah, they write Johnny's comic on the cover. That's right. This is Johnny's comic. This is my book. But yeah, well, I mean, that's the other thing too. You know, things have really changed. There used to be the comics price guide, you know, that people would go and buy, and they would base their prices off of that. But now the market's so unstable. It's like, you know, as soon as the price guide is printed, before it even gets to the store shelves, everything in there pretty much is wrong.
Did you read Wizard magazine back in the day?
I did when I could get them. Yes.
You remember the price guide in the back, and like I don't know. I think that like they had to have tweaked those prices so much. It was like saying that a comic book like triples in value like in 1 month. I don't know. That was such a crazy time for comic books. Do you remember back in those days they were saying like, buy X-Men #1 so that you can pay for your college education. And now like if you go to a comic book shop, X-Men #1 is still worth $1 after all these years.
Oh, it's all good, Jack. You're fine, man. Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. You know, when you know the actor that played Black Panther passed away, Black Panther shot up through the roof. You know, Chadwick Boseman, and then you had what was it, the the Miles Morales, the first appearance of Miles Morales shot through the roof when there was that announcement that he was going to be in the next movie. So I mean, it's small subtle things that happen in the comic book industry that, you know, takes a book that, you know, you've read 35 times and there's nothing special about it, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, "Hey man, if you have this book, it's worth like $1,500." And you're like, "What? I just bought this book like, you know, a year and a half ago for, you know, $3. What do you mean
Yeah,
it's
isn't
worth
that crazy?
1,500?" And it's insane. Well, what it is a lot. Some of these books are such small print runs. You know, by the time something does happen that it comes out, there's only so many copies that are still even worth any a crap. You know, they're considered. You know, because a lot of books these days are still considered. You know, these are new books. They're junk. That, you know, people throw them around. They read them. You know, 6 or 7 times. Then they end up in a box at a comic book shop, you know, being flipped through 80 or 90 times a day. And so, you know, that's what happens to a lot of these hidden gem books. So by the time the news rolls around that, hey, this book is good, you've got all these people, you know, that are like, oh man, I had this book graded and put up, you know, I had it signed at a Comic Con. Hold on, let me go pull it out. Oh, here it is. It's still a 9.8. It's still in mint condition. And so it's like they make serious bank on it because people are like, hey, you know, they call up their local comic shop. Hey, do you got this book? Well, yeah, I got one. You know, part of the front cover is torn. All the corners are edged and creased, and there's tape on the cover. And you're like, oh man.
Yeah. I had a friend who he had a copy of Walking Dead #1, and he asked me if I thought he should sell it, and I was like, I don't know. Once the TV show goes off the air, it's probably going to go down in value. You know what I mean? I don't know if he ever sold it or not. Yeah, and there goes my wife promoting
Promoting.
for me.
Promoting. Yeah, so let's get off this talk about the crazy market of comic books, and let's show off a little bit of Beowulf.
Thank you.
So, like I said, we you funded the book in a little over 24 hours, and
Yeah,
you are now a project we love, which is absolutely awesome. It means it bumped you up to the top, and it is a really cool project. So, why don't
thank
you
you.
give everybody kind of the rundown of what Beowulf is about while we look over the artwork and stuff?
So Beowulf is the story of a teenage girl who discovers that her cat is the reincarnation of an 8th century wizard. They both have simultaneous visions of a dragon waking after being asleep for 2,000 years. Or actually just 1,000 years. But her cat Mooney convinces her to go after the reincarnation of the dragon slayer Beowulf, who unfortunately has been reincarnated as a millennial slacker.
The millennial slacker. It cracks me up, man. The millennial slacker, because we joke around with Jimmy Noble and stuff about that. And so here you got Mooney and the teenage girl, and you've got Beowulf back in the old days when he was the big hero that he was.
Right.
And there is the reincarnation of the 21st century millennial slacker, Beowulf.
Right.
And so you did a lot of research in this book before you wrote the book, correct?
Yeah. So, I'm going to be honest with you. So I actually mixed two different legends. There's a German legend called Siegfried and a Anglo-Saxon legend called Beowulf. And I kind of combined those two legends. They're both about, fighting dragons. I took a little bit from each legend, but yeah, it's fairly accurate.
And so you wanted to do a twist on it. You didn't want it to be the same old Beowulf that everybody's read and seen shows and or movies about. You wanted to give it your own twist. So you did this whole thing where it's like, what if Beowulf was reincarnated 1,000 years later, and you had to get this guy who's a millennial slacker to now become the hero that he was 1,000 years prior.
Right. So most of the comic book is going to involve Mooney and Hazel getting this guy ready to fight this dragon.
Hey, Rich, thanks for joining in, buddy. Everybody, that's Rich with the Incantessi. Definitely go check out the interview I did with him a while last week. Or no, yeah, it was last week. It was last Thursday. My brain's gone crazy. He's only got a few days left on his.
I can't remember if I watched that one or not.
And then Danny said, I know Beowulf from the movie. I used to see this little nympho who loved the drive-in. I didn't actually get to see the movie, though. Get out of here, Danny.
I think he's just bringing that up to brag.
I think so. Oh, good old Danny.
Yeah, I saw the movie a while ago. I think this comic book's going to be better than that movie. I don't remember that movie being very good, to be honest with you.
So this is a scene out of the...
So this is the scene from the Middle Ages. This is kind of setting up why Beowulf hates the dragon, because he basically destroyed the little village that he lived in.
And he was getting flowers to take to his loved one, and if you see in the next panel, the flowers he leaves behind to save this old woman, and they get torched. So is that symbolic of, the fact that he lost his love in the accident too, or?
Exactly.
I gotcha. And then you've got the millennial slacker waking up.
Yeah, so he's reaching for the sleeping pills, and what we're going to find out later on in the comic book is that he's been having these visions his whole life, and he's kind of been like self-medicating to deal with these visions.
And I absolutely love the fact that you put the Elvira poster in the background back there. Like, that was the first thing I noticed when I was flipping through here. I was like, whenever you sent me the preview, to look over things, I seen that Elvira poster, and I was like, man, that's priceless. I love it.
Yeah, so I tried to add stuff into the background. Like, instead of just putting like a generic like poster in the background, I tried to put some stuff that I think, says something about the character. I don't know what Elvira says about him, but just maybe that he's
into chicks.
He likes ladies, I guess.
No, it's just funny. It's like you got the millennial slacker, but yet he was into some of the stuff that we were as kids. I guess that's kind of the connection there.
Right.
And then you've got the main cover here with our millennial slacker sitting in his armchair with a nice mug and the armor and the sword.
Right. And I
Whoops.
mean, this doesn't actually happen in the comic book, but it's it's meant to be thematic more than anything.
Yeah, it sets the mood. It sets the mood for, hey, here's Beowulf. He's a lazy slacker.
Right.
He's supposed to be a hero, but he's chilling in his cozy little slippers here,
Right.
sipping on a mug of who knows what,
Yeah,
hot cocoa.
there's a lot of background details, I think, that say a lot about him. And so then this is going to be the alternative cover or the variant cover, I guess. And since Victor was kind of in the middle in the first cover, I figured we would give Mooney and Hazel the spotlight on the variant cover.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if you guys haven't checked out the Kickstarter yet, when you do go check it out, definitely make sure you watch the outtakes of Grant trying to get Mooney, the actual real life cat that this book. There he is right there. And he's got 2 different colored eyes as well.
Yeah. So as he's referencing, that's our cat. That's who Mooney in the comic book is based on.
And so the outtakes are hilarious. It's typical cat, They want to be in your lap until you actually need them to be in their lap, and they're like, "Peace out, Holmes."
Exactly. Yeah, and then I did another interview yesterday, and the guy who came over and interviewed me, he wanted to get some photos of Mooney, and I swear to God, Mooney would not sit still for like even 30 seconds while this guy could get a photo of him. But that's cats for you. Yeah, Angie's saying that the Elvira poster is the tight SH.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here or
Oh, you
not.
can say shit. You're good, man.
Okay.
We are not censored on here. I don't have any sponsors. I am not paid. I won't be paid. Even if I've been offered on the platform that I could take paid advertising, and I was
Oh,
like, no, I'm
really?
good. Yeah, I was like, no, I'm good. I mean, yeah, over time I built up enough of viewers, and it's not what I do this for. I do this for fun and hang with you guys, and I want to us to be who we are, not be like, all right, man, you're gonna get on the show, you can't say shit, you can't talk about this person, you can't not do this. No, don't do. We're all good. This is
Yeah, that
straight up.
takes all the fun out of it, right?
It does. It takes all the fun out of it. See, and then we wouldn't have the fun audience in here. I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to put up comments from Danny D talking about his nympho girlfriend in the drive-through,
Right,
or I'm
exactly.
not starting the drive-through, then the drive-in, or
Oh, wow, that would be
think
even crazier.
and then Luis Torres. He likes to make some fun, crazy comments. He's probably busy tonight. He's working on his project Nebula Pearl and all that. Let me load something up too real quick. I will still be here. I'm going to go blank. So, yes, I know my screen's probably blank, but I didn't load this because I'm a millennial slacker. No, I'm just kidding.
I think I'm
Just kidding.
borderline millennial.
I don't know. I know I'm not millennial. I don't know. So, this is one of the cool
Oh,
things that we worked on together. So, Grant asked me about a month ago before we both launched our projects. He said, "Hey, do you want to do a cross promotion together?" And this was like kind of like when we first met. And so I'm like, "Yeah, we can." I'm like, "I didn't even know you had a project going on, because we watch, the Nevermind the Furthermore with Brian K. Morris, in the mornings, and we've chatted in the same group, but we never like talked to each other uh, personally." And so I was like, "Yeah, what's your book about?" And you're like, "Oh, you're like, you can go check it out on my website and sign up for my newsletter. You can get a brief glimpse at the comic." So definitely go check out his newsletter on his page.
right.
And I was like, "Well, mine's got a dragon in it." And he's like, "Oh, well, I seen yours had a dragon in it too." So I'm like, "Yeah, well, let's think of something." And I was like, "Window Cling," because
Exactly.
it's so funny because every single Kickstarter, like, people are like asking for ideas for stuff, and I'm like, "I really love your character. Make a freaking Window Cling as a stretch goal or a cross promotion or something." Because there's nothing cooler than showing it off on your car windows. I mean, car windows are boring. You don't
Yeah.
use the back passenger and driver's side windows for anything. So let's put some window clings on them,
Yeah,
And
I
so
don't have anything on my car yet, so this is going to be the first thing.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, back in the day, when you actually bought CDs, you didn't just like pay for some music that just magically plays on your phone without a cassette or a CD. Back
Right.
when you got CDs, I bought a Five Finger Death Punch CD, and it had the knuckles, and it had F, F, D, P in each one of the knuckle holes. And I got so many
Right.
comments on having that in my window, and it sucks because whenever the Cobalt went bye bye, I forgot to get my Five Finger Death Punch decal out of there. So I was like, man, I don't have any decals anymore. So when I got back into the comic book business 3 years ago, I was like, man, I really want to get some, window clings of some of this cool stuff. Even like I wish Van Perella offered more of a selection of them. There's some you can buy, but they're unlicensed, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna, you know, promote somebody that's doing knockoff work.
Right.
But it's like, so when you asked me, I was like, man, window clean, that would be so awesome. I'm like, I could see it now. The dragons circling each other with our
It was a
logos
good
and stuff
idea.
on it. I think it turned out beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely awesome. So if you guys back Xenonanite Titan and Beowulf on the physical level, you will receive this with your Xenonanite Titan package. I will be ordering the window decals, and we will compare backer lists. And once, because mine ends on the 18th, yours has I
I
think
think mine
24
ends the
days.
same day.
Yeah, so ours end like the same day, so there'll be no problem with us cross promoting the lists and stuff there. And I also have a cross promotion with CB Zane and Nebula Pearl. If you any of you that are not watching, if you have backed either one of those projects and you back mine, you will get this double sided art card with Into the Suck and this die cut sticker with Nebula Pearl. Because like Into the Suck's winding down. I think they have like 6 days left with Mr. CB Zane.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, man, window cleaning, that would be freaking sweet. I wish we would have did the now that I think about it, I may end up repurposing one of this art here and put this on a window clean because I love it. The homage to Tarna from Heavy Metal. It's just
Oh,
so
right.
yeah, this is freaking sweet. And I love Squeeze. Squeeze is one of my favorite characters from End of the Suck. Instead of calling this guy, yeah, Your Highness, they call him Anus. And like when I did the live reading of End of the Suck, somebody was like, "Did you just say anus?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's what Squeeze says." And I was cracking up because everybody's like, that's all everybody got hooked on, was the whole anus comment. So anyway, back to Beowulf. So yeah, so it was definitely cool, coming up with, our both of our stories had dragons in it, and I was like,
Yeah.
let's do the window cleaning. So you
It
got the
almost
art penciled
yeah.
up on that,
Yeah,
and
it almost felt like Destiny.
yeah, and so you got the art drawn up by another artist, and then you were able to ink and get it colored digitally.
Yeah.
So it turned out awesome. I love it.
Thanks. I'm glad you liked it. I think it's gonna look really cool in a car.
Oh, it'll look freaking sweet on a car. I mean, I love dragons. I always have. That was one of my big things growing up. I always loved stories and things with dragons in it, and like Dragonheart. That was one of the big stories. When I was a kid. With Sean Connery
I was gonna say,
voicing.
was that Sean Connery? Yeah, I remember that one.
Gosh, Dragonheart was such a great movie for when it came out. And then what was that other movie that came out with all the dragons
Are you gonna
attacking?
say? Are you talking about Rain of Fire?
Rain of Fire. Yes.
Was it Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I
Yeah, I
like that
love
one.
Rain of Fire. I never had a chance to watch it until like I happened to see it on DVD, and I was like, yeah, I wanted to see that. I forgot all about that movie. I took it home and watched it. I was like, man, this is awesome.
I haven't seen that movie in years. You know what? That maybe after I get off of here, I'll watch. I'll see if I can find that online, like if it's on Hulu or maybe Netflix. I don't know.
So you had mentioned, I know one of the things too that we didn't touch on with the book. So book two is half done, and you've already got the art for book two is half done, and you've already got up to issue 6 written,
Yeah,
correct?
everything is written up to issue 6. It's going to be a 6 issue storyline. Issue 6 might be double sized. I haven't decided. If I can't edit it down, it's going to be double sized. But yeah, it's going to be a 6 issue storyline, and then after that, what I want to do is I want to tell, since the story involves reincarnation, I figure we can tell stories from like any point in time that we want to. We could tell like Civil War era Beowulf stories. We can tell like Old West Beowulf stories. So I think like that's going to be really fun. Like doing stories from different eras.
And you'll be awesome. So like do like Xena the Warrior Princess only like in another like 1,000 years, and then, like it takes place on Mars. It'd be
Right.
like something from Total Recall.
Exactly. Yeah, we could do a science fiction version too.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I think I already have an idea for like an Old West Beowulf story. So that's probably going to be the first one that I do. But then after that, I don't know. Somebody suggested me doing like an old 1940s like detective era, and I think that sounds really cool. But the other idea that you mentioned, like maybe doing like a sci-fi version, I think that's like a really cool idea too.
I just love sci-fi, and everybody's asked me, why I did sci-fi for my book, and it's like I don't know. It's just really funny every time I end up, uh, talking about anything. I always find a way to put a sci-fi twist on it, and it's just I've been obsessed with space ever since I was little. Just I always wanted a telescope, and I never got one. And like even as an adult now, I'm like I've always wanted a telescope, and I've never actually went around and bought one because I'm like that's something stupid. That's a waste of money. I got so much other stuff to worry.
You know what's funny? Like, yeah, I don't know anything about your book yet. I mean, I backed it and my wife backed it. So you can send our copies in the same package if it saves money. But so it's science fiction, but you mixed in like dragons and stuff. So is it kind of like
So it's
a
a sci-fi fantasy
yeah.
slash human story. I mean, it's not really just like a sci-fi story. It contains sci-fi elements because it takes place in space, and there's a futuristic suit and all that stuff. But it's a human story. It's really something that's really heartfelt because you follow the life of Raziel Stevens. It's when he starts out as just a regular father working for the SCA. He's got this project that he's working on. He's at home on leave. He gets called back. There's an accident on the space station. He gets blasted off into some unknown universe that even Axiom, the Jarvis, I guess you could call it, of his suit, has no clue where they're at. And so
Oh,
it's about his journey and trying to make it home if if even is a home. Because see, the book one leaves a lot of questions, so that will be answered in book two. But you never know who it was that attacked the ship until later on. So the space station gets attacked. That's what causes the anomaly that he gets thrown through. And so it's one of those things of, were they attacked by somebody who wanted to steal the technology? Were they attacked by an alien being? Or who was it? Was it
right.
some kind of guerrilla, outfit that just came in and wanted to steal the technology? I mean, you don't know that. And so he doesn't know what's going on. So he doesn't know if the Earth's under attack, or, he doesn't know if his family's safe. He doesn't know anything. And so this is really, his story of how he got the suit, why the suit was created, what the suit's capable of, him learning to use the suit. And this gives you the idea of, how he, from when before he got the suit to when he has the suit, once I do the comic book series, because this will be a trilogy, like just a prose. I won't revisit it in the comic book series. I may do throwbacks to the prose, but I won't revisit the prose in the comic books.
So
But this is
is the comic book's gonna be like the same main character, or is it gonna just be set in the same world?
no, it'll be the same main character. It'll be Xenonanite Titan. It'll be his origin story, just like like the Punisher story. I use that a lot. If you didn't know that his family was killed, and they left him for dead, and he arose and went back to seek revenge on the people that killed his family, and then some. And so, without knowing that, if you would read the Punisher, you'd be like, okay, this is just this dude going around being a
Right.
mercenary, killing people, but why? And
Yeah.
so I never meant for this to be a comic book. I'm good at writing. Writing is what I do. I'm not good at art. I mean, I do crappy art with witty humor like Steph Pool here, which everybody who pledged on day one will get their own little Steph Pool thing. So here you've got Steph Pool, and you got that in there. So I'm not a super great artist, but I like to have fun with it. But I've always been into comic books, and I never thought, oh, I can make a comic book. And that's why I love interviewing, on here and talking to people who create comic books, because it's like, I want to see where that inspiration came from. Just kind of like my inspiration of why I write, because, when I was younger, I had a teacher that gave us these coloring books, pages, and we would color the page, and then we would have to write like a 4 or 5 page essay story of what's going on in the picture. And I always came up with really good ones. My teacher's like, hey, one day, you could really do something with this. She's like, if you keep at it, you could really write good stories. And so I was like, man, I love writing stories. I want to do this when I grow up. And then you get well, you don't want to be an author because you'll never own anything. You'll never be able to be anything. And so I was like, always had that eaten away. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll go to school to learn how to blow stuff up, because that's what I love to do on the side, So that's why it's Wrestle Explode Studios. It actually has meaning to it, like everything else that I do. And
You blow up stuff?
yeah, I did. I worked with high explosives for about 5 years. So
That's
I did blasting. I've demoed buildings, bridges, pyrotechnic shows, all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah, man. So that was my second thing, and then in '08 when we bought the house, the market hit the crapper. So I ended up getting a driving job because I already hauled high explosives, and I drove a lowboy hauling drilling equipment to the quarries and stuff that we blasted at. So that's why I ended up getting into driving. But it's like, back in 2010, I was like, I want to write again, and I love it. When I started writing the story, I was like, I really miss doing this. I never realized how much I loved it, and I missed it. And so I didn't get back into the comic book scene until like 2000, end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And then I really got back into it or about the mid to end of 2019. And it was when I was starting to, the art page, trying to get artists to come on and draw live and doing promotions, promoting people's Kickstarters, promoting people's art, promoting their books, trying to help, spread the word, because social media was blowing up then with, ways of getting your stuff out there, but people didn't really buy it because the cons were shut down. And it's like, it's not funny, but last year, it was funny how things came around, because what I've been wanting to do for so long came to fruition, because everybody's like,
right.
hey, can I be on your show? And I'm like, it's not a show. I'm like, look, man, I started the studio, and I was like, I started writing my book again because of everything that happened. And I'm like, I was just having my artists on, because I wanted to promote them, because, for doing work in my book. And, I really respect them as artists, and I really want to help get their name out there. I was like, sure, why not? And then it grew to what it is today. And so it's been, after 3 years of doing the promoting, and the last year starting writing this book again and writing the prose, I was like, the way this 900-page novel, this trilogy now plays out, it could really be turned into a comic book. And Xenonanite Titan would be such a kick-ass comic book character. I mean, just look at him. Just look at it. Awesome. So I was like, I started thinking about things that I could do for the story. So this is just the story of Raziel Stevenson, the bullshit we face on a daily basis and
Right.
in our lives, in a character. So you can really, empathize with them. And so, I mean, it's a great book. I'm not just blowing smoke up people's ass. It's really good. It was really good before I did the rewrite. And then last year with the whole cancer thing and all that crap that happened, and I took all my rage, my fury, my angst, my fear, and I put it all into that book. And that was
Oh,
the thing too. 10 years ago I didn't have kids. Now I have kids. That was something that I was talking about the other night. So now Raziel's kids, which Raziel's Xenonanite Titan, uh, Raziel's kids, the way they talk to him, totally changed in the rewrite, because
uh,
now they were always about the age of what my kids were. So I just actually gave them a physical age now, instead of just, you would see the way they talk, they were toddlers. And hey, Wendy. Um, all right, sorry. We'll get back to your questions here in a second.
she's one of the artists on the book, isn't she?
Yeah, Wendy did the one with all the sweet ass explosions. Hold on, we'll pimp that one out on here, and the sticker, of course, and the guy behind me. So there's the sticker. which is that right there.
Nice.
And then here's her piece with all the explosions, which we're going to one up that. You know, when the next piece rolls out, we've already got it figured out. You're just going to see Raziel's eyes, and it's just going to be nothing but explosions. We got to top it. Right, Wendy? Wendy's all over it already. She's like, yes, we're going to do it. And so, I mean, that was kind of my journey with everything. And I was like, man, this would be badass if we turned it into a comic book series. You know, if I would be able to find an artist that would be willing, you know, I want to get the story out there. I already wrote it. I am rewriting it. Like I said, you know, put all the emotion I had last year into it, which made it way better of a book. And, you know, I'm like, if I finish the story out, maybe somewhere out there, somebody will read this and be like, I really love the story. I'm really invested in the story. I heard you want to make a comic book. Let's get together and let's do it, because this is going to be a badass comic. And I want that because it'll be a symbiosis. I'm going to have an artist that's just as much emotionally attached to my character as I am. And I really want that. I really want it to show in the work. I don't want it to be like, hey, I made this comic book because they want to make money, because that's not how it is.
Exactly.
I want to make this comic book because I love this character. I love the story. I love the development that he has over the period of the prose. But the comic book is going to, you know, further his journey of, you know, who Xenonanite Titan is. And so, yeah, just eyes. That's right. Wendy's all over it. Raziel. And so that's another funny thing, Raziel. So if you don't know the backstory to that, that was what I wanted to name Roderick. And my wife is like not having it. She's like, you're not using that name. I hate it. And I love Raziel. And, you know, you had that, the
Your
legacy.
wife didn't like that name?
Huh?
Your wife didn't like the name?
No, she didn't like the name. And I always love the name, you know, from Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. We had mentioned that on another show. Somebody's like, you know, did you get some of that from Legacy of Kain? I was like, yeah, Soul Reaver was one of the stories that, you know, kind of enforced how much I loved that name, just hearing it being spoke. And I always did love that name. And so, you know, I was like, you know what? When I wrote that book in 2010, before we had kids, because we talked about kids' names, and I was like, you know what? When I'm writing this book, it's my baby. I'm like, his name's Raziel. Boom, right there. Since I can't name my kid Raziel, I'm gonna name my character in my book. So it's a great story, man. You know, Wendy's read it. Where Wendy read all of it, she gets on to me. You know, when I'm on live shows, she's like, "Why are you on here?" Not like on my own live show, but like when I'm watching other artists. When I was rewriting book one, because I sent her the first 3 chapters. It was the prologue, chapter 1, and chapter 2, and I left off at a really bad spot, and then it said chapter 3, and then there was like nothing wrote. So when you were scrolling through in the digital file, you know, you'd see it said chapter 3. So you're like, wait, chapter 2 ends. You're like, I need to read chapter 3 like right now. Right. And then she'd scroll past it and it was blank. She's like, where's the rest of it? I was like, what do you mean? And I was like, she's like, you're a horrible person. She's like, I need to know what happens next. Start writing it now. And it was the same reaction I got from my wife. And so I was like, that's where I kind of left the teaser off on the Kickstarter I ran last time. But I did finally get, yeah, I am a brat. I know. I knew that was coming. And so I did finally, you know, send her the rest of it. And then I sent her the rest of it, and she takes 2 months to finish reading it because she says she's too busy.
Oh, really? Oh, geez.
She had a bunch of Kickstarters too. I'm just giving her a hard time back. So yeah, she's read it. Brian K. Morris read it, and that was really uplifting when Brian got back to me, because I was having a bad time. It was right around August of last year. I couldn't even hardly walk. I was at work. I was having a bad day. I was like, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, you know. But like 2 weeks before that, I had sent Brian the final copy of the book before it went to the editor. And I was like, Brian, you know, we're going to be on Indie Event. Here's a copy of the book so you can check it out. And let me know what you think. That way, when we talk about it, at least you'll have some backstory to what's going on. He's like, oh, I got 3 other things I got to read. He's like, I'll kind of skim a little bit of the beginning, and then that way I know enough about it. And I was like, all right.
Brian's a very busy guy.
Yeah, he is a very busy guy. So when he messaged me a week later, and he's like, Russell, I finished the book, and I freaking loved it. He's like, I was super shocked at it. It totally took me for a surprise. He's like, I love the space opera, the pulp feel to it. And he's like, it's a great book. Cool. And you know, that really made my day to hear that coming from Brian, because, you know, Brian's not going to blow smoke up your ass. He's going to be like, well, this is a turd. You know, if it's really bad, he will tell you. Right. And so that coming from him, and the fact that he finished the book, you know, really, added to it that, I knew he was, legitimate in what he was trying to, what
Yeah,
he was
I mean,
saying.
everybody sends Brian stuff, so I mean, so he's got 100 things to read. So if he actually finished your book, he must have been enjoying it.
Yeah. And, it's the same thing with Philip Russert. I sent to him, and he was one that really pushed and said, you really need to tell people that this isn't just a sci-fi story. He's like, you really need to tell people it's a human story. It's an emotional story. It's not just a sci-fi. He's like, it's contained so many genres, and he's like, this is really good, and you need to keep going with it. And so, I did, and I kickstarted it, failed, and we're back on it now. But we're kicking ass and taking names now, and I couldn't be more humbled by the turnout. When I woke up Wednesday morning and it funded in 11 hours, it just blew me away.
Jesus, that was crazy. As soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh, thank God!" I decided to do a cross promotion with this guy.
But I mean, it's great. It really is, and it's all about the fans too, and the people, like Wendy Steenchainer, and working on the book Explosions took forever to finish, or working on Explosions forever to finish. Yeah, so I mean, it's just great. The people that we've met, along the way, like I said earlier in our show, had it not been for me working on this project and you working on Beowulf, we would have never have met.
Right.
We've met a lot of really cool people along the way. Wendy's one of them. Wendy's a super great person.
Yeah, I've met a lot of cool people through the Nevermind the Furthermore crowd. There are a couple guys on there who rub me the wrong way, but I mean, there are maybe one out of every 10, you know.
Yeah, like that Brian K. Morris guy.
Oh, I mean, he rubs everybody the wrong way. I think it's the Fez.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. That's what Brian and I were talking behind the scenes after the show on Tuesday, and I told Brian, I was like, "Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if Grant's like, I really hope Grant doesn't think I'm just like this some huge asshole." I was like, because he sent me a preview of his book, and I told him, I was like, "Man, I really like this, and I really don't like this. So let's switch this up a little bit." And I was like, I don't know if if he thinks I was just being cross with him. I was like, I hope I was like, I'm just a straightforward person. You know that, Brian. I was like, over the last year and a half, that I'm just straightforward. I just, tell you how it is. And I was like, I told him about this, this, and this. I was like, I don't think I wasn't meaning to come across that way. I'm like, when I'm at work, I'm like, hey, man, here's the gist of it. Rock on. And
Trust
I'm
me.
like,
Yeah, I always appreciate people giving me feedback. That's, without feedback, you're never going to get any better, right?
that's right. That's what we all strive for: constructive criticism.
Exactly.
I mean, I want book one to be awesome, but I want book two to be even better. I want
Right.
book three to be even better. I want book number 500 to be better. I don't want to ever be like, oh, this is my best book. No, I want it to be like, this is my best book yet, because it's better than the last, but it's not as good as the next one's going to be, because it's just going to keep getting better from here. And you hear people say that all the time, and it's true. You don't ever stop and say, I'm the best I can be now. Wendy Russell always loved more explosions.
Sorry, I
Woohoo!
saw another thing that we're over 1,600.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
awesome. All right, so now we'll back up. Sorry, Jack, I went off on a super long tangent. You guys know how
Yeah,
I like to chat.
I
All
don't
right.
I don't even remember what Jack was talking about
Grant
now.
said, "What is the thing you love about Superman?"
What I love about Superman is that Superman is the one guy who could do whatever he wants to and get away with it, and the thing that he chooses to do is help people. And I love the fact that it's kind of a weird writing puzzle how you write for Superman, because he's kind of indestructible. So you have to figure out ways to get around that. Like, everybody says that Superman is boring because he's indestructible, but he's not really when you think about it. Because, if you kill Lois Lane, that's going to hurt Superman. If you kill, Ma Pa Kent, that's going to hurt Superman. Or you can do other things, like you can have like the Parasite come in. The Parasite is a character who sucks the powers out of other people. So to me, he's endlessly interesting. To me, he's a lot more interesting than superheroes who, like, for instance, like Spider-Man. The only thing that's interesting about him is that he's the underdog.
He can shoot webs. He can swing from buildings. He
Right?
has superhuman strength, but at the end of the day, he's not indestructible. So all of his enemies have the capability of killing him. But with
Exactly.
Superman, you have to be creative in ways to get at
Exactly.
Superman. So I see where you're going with this. So
Well,
Superman's just interesting because you have to really find out a way to make it where he's being battled, and there is a fact of a chance of him being an underdog in the fight, not
right.
just because of kryptonite. It can't always be, oh, I've got kryptonite. Oh, yeah, it's been like that the
Exactly.
last 900 books. The enemy's always going to get kryptonite, and they'll use it against Superman, and now oh, yeah, here we go again.
Jack made a good point. Magic screws up Superman too. That's why Shazam can go toe to toe with Superman, even though he's not as strong. That's why when they did the DC versus Marvel, they had Superman team up with Thor, because Thor's not as strong as Superman, but Thor's powers are magic based. So yeah, Jack is right. That's another weakness Superman has that everybody forgets about. Magic.
And that's what's so great about superhero books. It's like, not all of them have superpowers. I mean, just like mine, Xenonanite Titan. And that's why I think it'll make for a great, story, because it's not really like a superhero book. It's just about a character. It's about a normal guy who has no fighting experience whatsoever. He has always been the underdog. He achieves and acquires the technology that he's creating, and he gets thrown out into the unknown. He's like, what the am I going to do with this? And how do I get home? And he's a super smart guy. He's just not like superhuman. He doesn't have superhuman strength. He does have the capability because of the nanites, and it's just, it's really, I think it makes for a really good story because you
Right.
never know what's going to happen. Because I mean, whereas a suit is immune to anything because it's made out of magnesium. It's an element that I created. It took me hours and hours of countless research to figure that out, because I would look up an element and I'd be like, oh, somebody's already thought of that. Okay. Well, what about this one? Oh, wow, that's a BDSM site. That's a username for somebody who runs a BDSM website. We are totally not using that, because if somebody Googles it, this is the first thing that's going to come up. So, it took hours and hours of research. And I was like, man, the only thing I have left are these two names that I absolutely hate. And I'm like, I've researched these; they're not been used, and I don't like them. And then I thought of magnesium. I'm like, how awesome is that? Magnesium's awesome because magnesium burns super white hot. It's blinding. It's super explosive. And I'm like, what if it's magnesium? And I'm like, he has the red, suit color that I describe in the story. I'm like, that was one of the rewrites that went in. I actually created an element that the suit is made out of, instead of it just being like this suit's made out of some crazy strange material. I'm like, I actually invented magnesium. And so I
Right.
was like, this is badass. I was like, so, it's made out of magnesium. But if somebody gets a hold of magnesium, he's susceptible to it. There could be other things so yeah, that's what's so great about superhero books is, trying to find the weakness. Let's see, that's because most people I talk about Superman have only seen the movies and don't read the comics.
Right.
I don't know why there's so much hate for the Superman movies. I love them all.
Yeah, and one of my big pet peeves is people saying that they think Superman is a boring character. I don't understand that. Like I said, I mean, it all comes down to people saying, "Oh, he's too powerful." Well, yeah, but that's what makes him interesting. Oh God, I just saw Jack's last comment, like out of the corner of my eye. Hey, I'm gonna leave that for a different podcast. All right, I'm not gonna talk all about that. Who knows who's gonna be listening to this show? My mom could be listening. Yeah, right. Like my mom would be able to figure out how to use Facebook.
But that one time, no, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and it's like Man of Steel. Man of Steel got so much flack. I never watched it, and I ended up getting the 3D Blu-ray for some ungodly, ridiculously cheap price. I think it was like $7. I paid for the 3D Blu-ray, and it came with a standard Blu-ray and the DVD. I was like, oh, for $7, I'll watch it, even if it is terrible. And I watched it. And I was like, holy crap, this movie was great.
That movie had one of the best trailers I've ever seen for any movie.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that movie. I will admit the ending took me by surprise. I was like, wow, I can't believe they just had Superman. Well, I won't. Yeah,
Oh, come on. The movie's been out for like, what, 15 years or more? So
but
I
yeah,
think we're
like,
past spoilers.
I mean, the ending kind of shocked me, but yeah, other than that, it's not a bad movie.
Well,
Um,
I'm just, I'm saying it's not as bad as everybody else. I'm not saying it's a super awesome movie, but I loved it. I was entertained. I thought it was a really good take on the character. I thought it was a cool take on the story, and it was really interesting. And
you,
I got to
okay.
stop basing my movie preferences on when people say stuff's really bad. Like I'll still watch Wonder Woman 84 eventually, and now that it's on Redbox, I might rent it one day this week.
I mean, Wonder Woman 84 is fun. I mean, it's kind of a clusterfuck, but
That's what
I mean, it's
everybody
fun.
says.
I mean, it almost kind of reminds me of like an old school superhero movie where like just none of the stuff in the movie comes from the comic books. Like, I mean, like yeah, there is like I mean, I think they did take the villain from the comic book, but he doesn't act at all like he does in the comic book. I can't remember what his name was.
Cheetah.
There's Cheetah, but then there's another villain.
I was like, I was gonna
Um,
say I know there's Cheetah in there, but I don't know who the guy is you're talking about.
yeah, the guy from the Mandalorian's in it too. I can't remember what his name is in the movie. He does come from the comic book, but he doesn't act at all like he did in the comic book.
I don't know. I just hear everybody talking about how horrible the fight scenes with the cheetah are.
It's pretty CGI. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's worth watching. I mean, do you have? It's probably not worth paying the extra money for HBO Max if you don't already have HBO Max, but it's worth watching if you have like an hour and a half to kill or 2 hours.
So Maxwell Lord.
Maxwell Lord, that's it.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Sorry, that's what I was googling.
Oh, Angie has it.
Oh, Angie, get that. We did it at the same time.
So we were talking about weaknesses in superheroes. So Beowulf doesn't have like an obvious like physical weakness. Most of his weaknesses are kind of like mental. Like he has a lot of fear in him. He'd rather be sitting at home drinking beer, relaxing, than out fighting dragons. Those are mostly his weaknesses.
Freaking slacker.
So do you have a favorite superhero, Russell? Superman is obviously mine, but who's yours?
I have 3. Vampirella, of course. Everybody knows Vampirella is like one of my favorite. And I don't. I mean, in a way, she's a superhero, and in a way, she's not. I mean, I always bring it up. She's an alien, not a vampire. A lot of people don't know that. They just see the covers and are like, oh, it's a vampire book. I mean, and her name's Vampirella, so she's a vampire. She's actually not. She's an alien from another world that comes to Earth, and that's why her and Dracula are at odds, because she doesn't have the weakness of vampire. She can walk in daylight.
Right.
She's immune to silver and the cross and stakes. And she's just a total badass. And I was like, that is one of the coolest concepts of a vampire-ish character ever, is like, what if it was an alien? And her and Dracula just go at it, and there's several different storylines where they cross, Vampire Love Draculon, and some of the other storylines where they come toe to toe. But Punisher's always been one of my big ones. Punisher, as of late, has been lacking.
Right.
I still enjoyed the movie. I thought the movie was great. The second one was great because of the parkour scene when he shoots the grenade launcher and hits the guy in midair while flipping. Like, honestly, you have to ask yourself, how many times did I rewind and watch that scene? I'm going to
Just
answer
the timing of
honestly
it is
and say I have no idea. probably about 25 at least. Because my wife is just like, there's something wrong with you. Because I kept rewinding it. And I was like, I even played it in slow motion where he's like, flip, 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 boom. And it hits him. And I just started cracking up laughing. I mean, I couldn't help it. You know, you can know a movie's bad and still watch it and like it. Punisher and Spawn are my favorites. Spawn is one of my favorites. So my top three are Vampirella, but definitely Punisher, and I just had a brain fart on what the other one was. Totally. Oh, Gambit.
Gambit.
Duh.
Okay.
Duh. I'm like, what the hell? Where's I going with this? Gambit's always been my favorite, and everybody's gonna know why because he can touch shit and make it blow up.
Right.
Like, what other superpower in this world do you need than the ability to make anything explode? I mean, that's awesome. I mean, the guy freaking throws playing cards like hand grenades, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's psychokinetic energy, but it's still an explosion, and it's still awesome. And I've been so butthurt about like, don't even ever tell me that there's a freaking Gambit movie coming out because I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. Because like every time I've gotten excited for the Gambit movies coming out, it's like, oh yeah, it's in production. Such and such has been casted, and I'm like, oh, it's happening this time. Nothing.
I know they put him in the one movie,
Yeah,
but
X-Men Origins.
it wasn't very good.
Or not
And
Origins, it was
Wolverine.
the Wolverine, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't very good, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, they keep saying that they're going to make another. They're going to give it another try. I wonder why they haven't.
I don't know. Well, I mean, now everything's up in the air.
Yeah, Jack is right. I knew what you meant when you said the second Punisher. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It is the third Punisher.
There's the Dolph Lundgren one, there's the Thomas Jane one, and then there's I can't remember what that actor's name is. But yeah, I had the same experience. I tried to show Angie that Punisher movie, and she was like, "Why did you suggest that I should watch this?" Because she doesn't like she likes action movies, but she doesn't like lots of blood and like guts and stuff, and like the scene where like the guy's fate, like he falls into the vat of broken glass, and it's like crushing him up. Oh man, I mean it's awesome, but
It's
it
pretty
wasn't
brutal.
a cup of tea.
So what you're saying is she didn't watch like the last two Rambo movies that came out, right?
We watched the last one wasn't very good. The one before that I liked though.
Oh, the one before that was awesome when they were working out in the fields
Yeah,
and he got on that freaking machine gun, that 50 cal at the end, and he's shooting at him down in the water, and limbs are just flying off. Like that was another one of those like scenes where I was giggling giddy as a schoolboy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so freaking awesome.
did you
And
see? We watched the last one though. What did you think of that?
I thought it was slow. I mean, it was kind of cool with the tunnels and stuff when he was fighting him in the tunnels. That part of the movie was pretty cool.
Yeah, that I liked the end. I don't know what it is. I one of my favorite things in movies is like a montage of somebody setting traps and then
Yeah.
watching those traps go off. That's kind of why I like Rambo movies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that was awesome. The tunnel scene was awesome, but the whole story of him going to try to find, you know, the daughter, and then he gets his ass beat on the top of
Yeah,
the building. I'm like, dude, where's what? You're just gonna
yeah, I
sit there
didn't
and let him
understand.
kick the shit out of you, and then they're just gonna let him go like that,
Yeah,
you
I didn't
know?
understand why he followed her if he didn't have like a plan or anything. Like I don't know. That didn't seem like something Rambo would do. You know, Rambo would have a plan.
Yeah, it just none of it made any sense. And then at the end, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. He's setting traps. He's about to kick some ass. And then at the end, when he freaking nails him to the barn door with the arrows and then rips his heart out, I
That
was
was
just like,
yeah. I liked the ending of that movie, but I didn't like the beginning.
yeah, it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. But those are my three go-to: Gambit, Vampirella, and Punisher. Of course, the indie comic books. I'm into a lot of those. Like Wendy's comic books, fun. Into the Suck is a lot of fun. I can't wait to read Nebula Pearl because that's going to be insane. It's written by Wendy CB, who's in charge of Into the Suck, and then Alfred and Kara, who created the kind of the characters in the story. They do Fire Bitch, and well, CB also does Scorpiana. and Michael Schumacher wrote part of it. So it's going to be absolutely insane. So I do love my indie comics as well. Luis Torres has a couple of really good books. I really liked his, which is that's Codex Entertainment LLC, is who's my Nebula Pearls being produced under. Lewis is the one that's in charge of that, and he did Tales of Necropolis, and I love it because as a kid, that was one of the cool things I loved watching was Tales from the Crypt. It was on really late at night, and you'd sneak the TV on because you knew your parents were asleep because they were, your dad was snoring away, and so you put your T-shirt under the bottom of the door to block the light from the TV, and you're like, you barely have it turned up. And you'd watch Tales of the Crypt in the middle of the night, and that's what Tales from Necropolis really reminded me of. You have Daxina, who is like the guy from Tales from the Crypt, and she's like, I'm going to tell you these stories, and then these stories play out, and they're like, at the end, you're like, this is the moral of the story, and there's some pretty crazy ones, and they're like, people being ground up and put on pizza as toppings, and some all kinds of crazy stuff. Grant, your mom did like this video.
All right, well then I'm glad I didn't talk about whatever Jack wants me to talk about.
That was a delay right there. The last Rambo movie was not a Rambo movie. That is correct.
You know what, Jack? I thought that too. I thought maybe they were just going to do like a generic Sylvester Stallone action movie, and then at the last minute they realized, hey, we could probably make more money if we called this Rambo, because he doesn't act like Rambo.
No, you shouldn't be in a chat room by yourself again.
I think there's a couple people, aren't there?
Yeah, there's still 3 people on, Jack. Unless they're on YouTube. You're not in the chat room by yourself, buddy. Well, see, before I've split it up, sometimes if you do 2 separate Facebook pages, because right now we're streaming to 2 YouTube pages and 1 Facebook page, I've done 2 Facebook pages, and it makes separate Facebook chat rooms. So you have like 3 people talking on one side and 2 people talking on the other. Yeah, who knows? I don't know.
That sounds confusing.
It is really confusing because you got people talking, and then they see the comments from Facebook, and they're like, "Why aren't these people in here with me? I thought I was the only one in here." So yeah, I mean, Beowulf looks really fun. I mean, like you said, you did a different take on it from what the movies and stuff that we've seen are. You're doing, what if he was reincarnation of Beowulf, and it's this guy that's just like, I want to go party and hang out with my friends and do nerd shit. And I don't really want to go slay a dragon. Who cares? Let it burn half the world up. I got stuff to do,
Exactly.
So that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you before we end the show tonight, and let you give a shout out at the end on where people can find you. Why did the dragon come back, or is that something that we have to wait for till later?
No, that's not a spoiler. That's in the beginning. Sort of like any dragon, he wakes up because he's pissed that people are messing with his gold.
Oh, so it's kind of like a Smeagol sort of situation.
Exactly. So, yeah, and then that sets off like a whole chain of events, a dragon's not, if you mess with a dragon's gold, he's not going to stop until, even if it's just 1 piece of gold, he's going to track you down till he gets that last piece of gold. So, so that is kind of like a whole subplot, like, okay, would it be easier to just track down all the gold, or would it be easier to just kill this dragon? But I don't know. I'll leave it there because I hope I'm not giving too much away by saying that.
No, I didn't. So the reason why I was asking is because, I know in some of the different lore and stuff, the dragon's killed. So I didn't know if this was like a reincarnation of the dragon. All right. That's kind of what I was wanting to know. Is this the same dragon as before?
Yeah, this is the same dragon from 1,000 years ago. He's literally been asleep that long.
Yeah, because we all know from lore that dragons can live thousands of years. So, so this is basically him. He's sleeping. He's hanging out in his mountain, and he's got all of his gold, and somebody's like, "Oh, cool! I found all this gold," and they run off with it. And now the dragon's awake again, and
Exactly.
Beowulf is reincarnated as a freaking slacker.
So to answer Jack's question, Jack was asking what his flaw is. I would say most of Beowulf's flaws are mental as opposed to physical. Like he doesn't have a lot of self-confidence. He's scared of the dragon. He's lazy. He's unmotivated. And like I said, he's been self-medicating for years. So it's going to be hard for him to, it's going to be hard for him to stay sober long enough to fight this dragon as well. So I guess that's more of like a flaw like Iron Man as opposed to a flaw like Superman.
Yeah, he lets his mind get in the way.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I will let you give you the full screen. That way you can tell everybody where they can find you. If you would please give one last rundown about the story of Beowulf and what the plot of the story is of that they are backing.
I'll tell you what. I'll point to characters here. So this is these are the main characters. This is Hazel. She's a 13-year-old suburban girl. She finds out that her cat Mooney is the reincarnation of an 8th century wizard. They have simultaneous visions of a dragon awakening after 1,000 years. Mooney has the idea to go after the reincarnation of Beowulf, who's been reincarnated as a late 20s slacker. He would rather be sitting around drinking and watching TV than fighting dragons. So the main plot of the story is going to be Hazel and Mooney trying to get Victor, trying to get his act together. Because he's going to have to go up against this dragon by himself. So as far as where you can reach me on Facebook, GW Lankard. I think my Facebook, my Instagram, and my Twitter are all the same, at GW Lankard. And you can find Beowulf on Kickstarter. I think Russ has been putting the address in there the whole time. Yeah, there you go. And then as far as my website, you can go to monarchpublishing.net. And if you go to monarchpublishing.net, you can download a free sample of the comic book there. You just have to put your email address in there. And when you put your email address in there, you'll automatically be entered into my newsletter, which I don't spam you. It's twice a month and it's interviews and stuff. It's not spam.
And also, sorry, I'm trying to pop this link in for the Monarch Publishing. And also, there are reviews. There's 3 different links that are listed on the Kickstarter page itself for the reviews for on the book.
Yeah, and we'll have more reviews later this week.
Give me just a second. I'm copying this in. Sorry.
So, Jack, I wouldn't say that Beowulf is like Martian Manhunter. I thought Martian Manhunter actually had a physical weakness. I thought he was allergic to fire.
I'm back. I don't know. I never really followed Martian Manhunter. I know he was a badass character in the fighting game. Oh, what is it called?
Oh, are you talking about Injustice?
Yeah, Injustice. That's what I was trying to think of.
You know why I like Martian Manhunter? He was cool on the Justice League TV show, the animated series that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I only don't know like a basic, rundown of Martian Manhunter. I've never really been into DC. I mean, I like Batman and Superman. I just never have been a real big collector or reader of the comics. I mean,
you're more of a Marvel guy.
I'm, yes and no. I mean, I don't know.
Are you more of an indie guy?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I would say lean more towards Marvel. Between the big two, definitely, Marvel. I do like Batman. I do like Superman. I just never have been big into collecting on those. I did read some of the series, and they would finish out, and then the new 52 happened, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm out on all this stuff. I don't know. I just never really got into it. But I mean, I love Batman and Superman. Don't get me wrong. I love the comics. I love the movies. I just am not a huge collector of it. My real uh, calling was when I found Vampirella and some of the indie comic books out there that were just absolutely fantastic, like Fathom and what's the other one? Late night brain fart. What's the other one?
Are you
Gen
talking
13.
about with Fathom?
Huh?
You mean similar to Fathom?
Yeah, Gen 13. I just thought of it. So like Gen
No, Gen
13,
13, okay.
Fathom. I like the Darkness, Witchblade. Um,
So you're a '90s guy like me.
yeah. Yeah, and I loved a lot of those books. I mean, those were kind of my forte. Gen 13, Fathom, The Darkness, Vampirella. And, the first Vampirella book I read was actually the Harris #1, the Adam Hughes. And I was like, oh, this looks cool. I picked it up at an antique shop that was going out of business. And I took it home and read it. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Because, and then that's when I looked into more of the backstory. I was like, what? She's an alien? I'm like, this is freaking crazy. So, that's kind of become my major collection is Vampiro. That's my #1 go-to. I mean, how that's the only comic book tattoo I have is Vampirella. So, um, and I'm gonna get there eventually. That's gonna be my big thing is completing the 1969 Warren run. You know,
That's funny that, like you said, that Xenonanite is a combination of sci-fi and fantasy, and you said that Vampirella is one of your favorite characters. So that's kind of a combination of fantasy and sci-fi too, huh?
yeah, yeah, and that's kind of like the stuff that I like. And to be honest, a lot of I love Lord of the Rings. I loved Doom Knee Deep in the Dead was a really good freaking novel. I absolutely love that. Um, what are some of the other series that I've read? The Redwall series. Everybody always gives me shit about that. The Redwall series is by far one of my favorite series ever. Like Brian Jakes had just a phenomenal way of storytelling, the way that you could really empathize with his characters, and that's where the way I write my stories is kind of like his. You can
What's
empathize
the
with
name
the
of it?
character. The name of the series,
Yeah,
Redwall. It's the Redwall series. It's Brian Jakes. It's BrianJa. I think it's CQUES.
that's cool. I'm always looking for fun stuff to read.
Oh, dude, there's 23 books in the series. It starts out with Redwall, and then it goes to Mossflower, and it goes on, and I think it ends. I think the very last book was the Doom Patrol, or maybe it was the one that came after that. I don't know. I've started thinking about reading them to my kids, but it's a great book. So it's so awesome, and like nobody I ever talked to has ever heard of it except for Armando Ramirez, and I think Smithers, one of the other guys that gets on here, is awesome. Yeah, fire only affects him mentally. It says. Did not know that Vampirella tattoo. Yeah, it's right here. I mean, I've only showed it like 80 times.
Neat.
There you go, Danny. Just for you. So, um, so yeah, it's like it's the characters are all animals, and they all live in this fort in the woods. And the very first story is about Martin the Warrior. It builds on this story about Martin the Warrior and this quest that he has to go on to save the abbey. And it seems like a real kiddie story, and when you first read it, and the only reason I ever came across it is like I don't know, I was just randomly looking through books in the library. Like I checked out hundreds of books in the library. I was always reading as a kid, and it was just one of those random books that I came across. I was like, oh, this looks kind of cool. I'll check it out, whatever. And I was like, man, this is freaking awesome. And so I started buying them. When they had a book fair, there was like a new book that came out. And I was like, holy crap, they're still writing this series. And that's when, before the internet was real big, because it was like in, this is going to be 95, 94.
Okay.
Maybe it was 96. So I bought a book in the book fair, and then I fell in love with it. I was like, I bought all of them, and every few years or a year, a new one would come out, And then unfortunately he passed away. Um, so I collected all the books, and dude, I'm so freaking stoked. Netflix bought the rights to all 23 books, and they're turning them into movies and a TV show, and it's gonna be badass. Russell showing nipple. Get out of here! Don't get too excited, Jack.
Don't get too excited.
So that was, dude. It's a great series. Like even now, I would still recommend it.
I'll check it out.
It's a young adult book, but it's very adult. Like a kid reading it wouldn't pick up on all the subtle stuff in there. But as an adult, you're like, you would read it and you'd think, oh, this book's gonna be kiddish, especially looking at the cover. But there's a lot of gore and crazy stuff that happens in the book where kids wouldn't really pick up on it. But as an adult, you're like, holy shit, they're massacring these people. And each time it always references back to Mossflower, which is the Red Wall Abbey, and that's why it's called the Red Wall series, because it's always based on this fort or this abbey that's called Red Wall. And each time like something rolls around, they always reference back to Martin the Warrior, and they want to be like him, and they go off on this adventure. But anyway, this whole thing that I'm spiraling out of control talking about is that's a little. I thought you had a whole hit piece. Make her jiggle when you twerk. Get out of here. So this whole shebang, what I'm trying to get at is Redwall is wrote in this way that there's going to be an adventure. Bad stuff is happening. You don't really know what or who or why or how or what's even going to happen, because his books didn't always go as planned. Sometimes when you were like, oh, I really want this hero to win, they would die at the end. Or sometimes when you So I mean, it was one of those things you never knew how it was gonna. You didn't read the book and go, "This is what's gonna happen at the end," and I love that.
It kind of sounds like it might be a precursor to like Game of Thrones in that way.
Kind of. I mean, it's awesome. It is a really good series, and I cannot wait to read it to my kids. When they actually can sit and be attentive enough to listen to a chapter of a book, then I'll definitely start reading it to them at night. Read them like a chapter every night, because it's a really good book. Like you said, I read it in like, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade, somewhere around there, and it was freaking awesome. It was a great book. So I can definitely shoot you over the details on it. But I mean, hell, Netflix is buying it and turning it into a movie and a show. So that kind of tell you that it's nothing to sneeze at and say, oh, that sounds stupid. Because it is freaking awesome. And I mean, they made a cartoon on it. It used to air on Channel 9. There was a cartoon, called Red Wall.
Huh. I wonder if you can find it on YouTube.
I'm sure you probably could. It's really nothing like the books. It's a kidded down version of it.
Right.
And so that's what I was kind of nervous about when I heard the announcement that Netflix was going to be doing a show on it, but they're doing it full glory. And it's going to be awesome. I'm so excited. Kids just say, ooh, pretty colors. Get out of here. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent like that. But
right.
Guys, definitely check out Grant's book. I look forward to reading it. It's going to be fun. And
I think you'll like it.
Oh, I'm sure I will. So I'm going to kick you to the back room, say my goodbyes, and call it a night. So I'll see you in just a second if you want to hang out.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit. Yeah.
Cool, man. Is it working? Hello? That's hilarious.
I thought you were putting me in the back room.
You are? There you go. It's funny. On my computer, he's in the back room, but on my phone, he's still in there. I'm like, what is going on here? Craziness. So everybody, thanks so much for watching tonight. Definitely give Beowulf a look at it. Sounds like a great story. It's an interesting take on it. You always love a twist on it. And like I said before, if you back Xenonanite Titan and you back Beowulf #1, you will get somewhere in this list here of awesomeness this window cling right here with the 2 dragons circling each other. So it's for physical level backers only. Unfortunately, we can't afford to kick out the shipping to send over to digital customers. But if you are a physical backer on both projects, we will send you the window cling. Definitely check out the project. Check out his project. Check out my project, Xenonanite Titan. Go check out his website that I popped in the links. monarchpublishing.net. Go on there. You can sign up for the email, and you will get a glimpse at the comic book. And other than that, everyone, thanks for being here. Everybody who goes back and watches this show, thanks a lot for watching back. We love you all. Uh, Other than that, everybody have a great week. And as always, Russ Explode Studios, projects that'll blow your mind. You guys have a great night.